Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Statesman Soundwave with your host, Raghav Khosla. Over these past few weeks, myself and my co-host Sabrina wanted to take a look at the lives of minority students at Stevenson High School. Stevenson has a student population of which 34% students are Asian, 8% are Hispanic, and 2% are Black. We interviewed students who are part of cultural clubs such as Chinese Club, the Filipino Student Association, and the Black Student Association to understand how the experience for a minority student is at Stevenson High School. We also spoke with Dr. Haney, the Director of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, to get an administrator's point of view on the same topic. We have included snippets from each conversation in this podcast that are truly meaningful to understanding this minority perspective at Stevenson. Ultimately, we hope this podcast helps you just see yourself in the shoes of a minority student at Stevenson High School. Without further ado, let's get the administration's point of view with Dr. Haney. We opened up by speaking about his goals as the Director of EDI.
Primary goals, I would say it starts with the mission of EDI here at Stevenson and in this department, and that is for each and every one of our students to feel a deep sense of belonging, inclusion, and dignity here at our school.
Dr. Haney has been at Stevenson for around a year and a half at this point, and he spoke about his experience as the only Black administrator at Stevenson High School.
When I first got here, I knew that looking at the makeup of the staff, the faculty and staff, that there weren't a lot of people that look like me here. I knew that. And so quite frankly, that's part of the reason why I wanted to be a part of the solution coming in. I knew that my voice would be needed and necessary due to the perspective that I bring as a Black person and as a leader, as a school leader in multiple different environments. It's been a really, really good experience here. And I'll say that just based on the people that I work with, the people are very, very collaborative and are willing to learn and grow. My perspectives are heard and valued. I have conversations with my colleagues on a regular basis. And so it's a really, really good space to do this kind of work because this work isn't easy. It's full of difficult conversations. It's full of self-reflection and looking at our practices and being able to say to ourselves, should we continue doing this or do we need to shift and change? And so I've seen a lot of opportunities for change. And so I'll say that my experience has been a positive one, just overall in terms of personally and being a person of color within this organization.
Dr. Haney has been able to embrace this multicultural environment he's really witnessed at Stevenson so far due to his own childhood and the diverse community he grew up in.
I grew up in a multicultural neighborhood in Chicago on the north side in a neighborhood called Uptown. And in Uptown, there were a plethora of different races and ethnicities. And so that's a space of comfort for me. So when I'm in the hallway and I see all of the different ethnicities and cultures, it just makes me feel at home because that's what I grew up around.
Shifting focus back to his work as the Director of EDI, Dr. Haney really wants to be deliberate in considering the diversity of Stevenson when creating this inclusive environment he truly strives for in his role.
Are we considering all of the different sexual orientations in our building? Are we thinking about how do we make sure that we're constantly thinking about all of the difference that is existing in our school building when we're planning activities, when we're introducing new courses, when we're just making major decisions in the school? Part of our focus for this year is supporting our students with student-to-student interactions, so that students are how do I say this nicely? Just treating each other with respect and human dignity, and making this a welcome place for everybody.
It's important to note that Dr. Haney isn't alone in his commitment to creating an inclusive environment at Stevenson. There are a lot of passionate and driven students who take part and take unique initiatives in clubs such as the clubs we're going to be talking about, but also FIRE, to highlight the diversity that exists within our community.
So FIRE worked with DivCo to create a diversity or what's it called, a holiday calendar. And so what the holiday calendar is, it goes out, and it hasn't officially gone out yet, but it's going to go out to all of our faculty and staff members. And the goal and the purpose for our faculty members to be able to see that holiday calendar is to be able to make decisions based on upcoming holidays around like some of the workloads, for holidays where a lot of our students will celebrate and need some time, with a short description about the holiday. So it's just a mechanism to help teach, about all of the diverse holidays that our students celebrate and to help us make good decisions, when it comes to homework and assessments and things of that nature. So I was really proud of so many of the clubs and how they responded to the needs, when it comes to the work around inclusivity.
However, despite student efforts, there is still a lack of cultural understanding within Stevenson, especially for students of the dominant culture. Dr. Haney wants to facilitate the development of this understanding while also focusing on creating a sense of belonging for every single member of the student body.
For our students who are not a part of the dominant culture, our students have expressed that sometimes there's assumptions made about what students who aren't a part of the dominant culture and what they understand. And what I mean by that is, for example, the American culture has holidays and cultural customs, and all of our students don't understand them all. And just how important it is, again, to, when it comes to being a person, being a person of color, for there to be an understanding that people may come with different cultural values and cultural perspectives. And it's just important not to lift any one of those as better than the other, right? That different is good. Difference isn't bad. And I've received heard a lot of stories just about, being ridiculed for differences, and that doesn't feel good, right? For students. If I can have only one thing happen, and that one thing alone, that would be every single one of our students feel that they belong, feel that they matter, feel that they're included and inclusive, and never have to worry about being excluded or treated differently, because of their race or because of their ability, or because of their sexual orientation.
Dr. Haney built on the idea of creating a sense of belonging by helping students develop empathy for each other in terms of the differences that may exist between them.
And thinking about which part of your identity is most important to you at any given moment, or which component of your identity has made you feel that you are different from other people, right? And so trying to build empathy, right? Because when you build empathy, it makes it very, very difficult to stand by when bad things happen to other people, right? Like when you can empathize and when you feel that an injustice, it bothers you too, then that's when you improve, your communities and society when you have a greater feeling of empathy.
Finally, Dr. Haney concluded our very powerful discussion with important words about reflecting diversity within Stevenson.
So we can talk about diversity, and we could say that diversity is a goal, but I read in a book that I read, I can't remember, that diversity isn't a goal. Diversity is a reality, right? Diversity is here already. And so we should reflect that diversity in an authentic way. So that means our books, we should see people of color. We should see people that look like you, people that look like you, people that look like me. We should see main characters that are disabled, right? We should see main characters who are going through a shift and change, a change in sexual orientation, because they matter. And they're here and they're a part of our community. So that's some of the work that we have to do to move away from the dominant narrative being the only narrative and a true narrative of the diversity that's all around us, that is in our world. We have to prepare everyone for a diverse world that's out there.
After speaking with Dr. Haney, we spoke with Janice, the co-president of Stevenson's Black Student Association. We spoke about her experience as a black student at Stevenson, as well as the work she does with BASE to develop a more inclusive environment for her and her black peers. First, Janice spoke about her views on Stevenson's environment and whether or not it was truly inclusive.
In my opinion, I think that Stevenson likes to advertise, especially to the community, that we have a very diverse student body and everything. But they like to do that, in my opinion, for diversity points with like other schools in comparison. But when you're actually in school, it doesn't feel like that all the time. It's kind of like they advertise that everything's great and that everything is more inclusive and everything. And they are making efforts, but there are still some places where they're lacking. So even though they are advertising like the school is very diverse, and it is in like the amount of like Asian students and like Jewish students and things like that. But as far as like Black students, there truly aren't very many of us. So I feel like the diversity advertising is kind of misleading. And as far as Black students go, I feel like they don't take care of us emotionally as much as they should.
What plays into this lack of inclusivity for black students that Janice speaks about is also the lack of accountability when it comes to racially motivated situations and reprimanding the oppressor.
As far as what is it, racially motivated situations, especially, what I've noticed, and a lot from a lot of my other Black student peers that have told me about situations that they've been in, when they've gone to report situations that have happened at school, there's been a lot of leniency in the punishments towards the oppressors in the situation. And with that, because as we know, like Stevenson has a lot of no tolerance policies for like alcohol, drugs, and things like that. But when it comes to racially motivated situations, there's a little more leniency, and they don't really have as much of a set punishment of what to really do. So that makes it more subjective and more by the situation.
However, rather than punishing the oppressor, Janice believes that they should be educated and truly learn from their mistakes rather than just facing a suspension or loss of privilege.
Like education for like the oppressor, because like just saying like if you were like to like let's say like suspend someone for like a couple days or something, like and like no follow up with it whatsoever, they I feel like they'll just go back right into their patterns because they wouldn't really learn anything. They'd have just been like, oh, okay, like I'm off of school for a couple days, yada yada yada, come back to school and it's like back to normal. And in turn, they'll probably get mad at the victim for saying something and it'll keep spiraling that way. So if we don't follow up with the oppressors and have education as part of like the repercussion, well, not necessarily like the repercussions, but I guess the process of repercussions, then I feel like there's no way for this to truly improve because they wouldn't have really learned like, I guess, what's at the root of what they said or what they did and what the actual issue is. Because sometimes if you don't point that out, people just won't know and they'll just keep doing what they've been doing.
What's helped Janice feel like a greater part of the community is joining BASE, the Black Student Association at Stevenson. As co-president of BASE, Janice plays a significant role in the work that BASE does at Stevenson, which she spoke about as well.
Out of state where I grew up before I was here, I was most of the time like the only Black girl in my grade. At one point, I'm pretty sure I was like the only Black student in my school. So it was very isolating. So seeing like other students at Stevenson that were Black, it was very comforting because there were other people that were going through things that I was going through, people that I could talk to about my situations, and they would understand it. It wasn't like a, okay, like a smile and nod situation. They actually understood what I was going through and they could help me with that. And especially World's Fair, sophomore year was incredibly amazing. It was so much fun, and I'm very glad that we could do it in person this year. So I'm excited for that. In base, well, as far as like our usual club meetings, we're trying to incorporate more of like an education piece than we have in the past, because in the past it's been more of just like a kind of chill, just like kind of hang out. And it still is. We do still just hang out and stuff. But something that we have incorporated is doing a fun fact of the day. So we, like every single meeting, we have a fun fact from that day and whatever year in the past of something that has to do with Black culture, Black history. And it's very interesting because most of the facts that I end up finding and putting into our presentations, they're not taught in school. So like I think for our last meeting, it was, I think it's CJ Walker, who was, who started, I can't remember exactly the association, but he started an association which promoted something called Negro History Week, which then later became Black History Month, which was very interesting because before this, I didn't even know that the association even existed. So I think it's very important because a lot of the things that we are teaching our members aren't taught in any history class at school. So that education piece is very important because most of the Black students don't know a ton about their own culture because it's not part of mainstream education content.
Janice courageously shared some powerful first-hand experiences that she has had to endure at Stevenson, speaking to the lack of inclusivity she has felt at times at the school.
And I know that, at least in my experience, there was one time that I had a Black sub one time, and like it was in like I think my freshman year like bio class or something, and like we walked in and like for like the first like 10 minutes of class, everyone kept asking, "Is this guy your dad?" And I'm like, "No, I have no idea who this man is." Like, no, and like people just kept on asking me, and I was like, I don't know who this man is. Like, I'm sorry, I can't. I don't like. I don't know. It was just like a very awkward situation because like that's the immediate thing that people think. Also, like when people see two Black people in the room, they automatically think they're related. That's another thing. Like not only like in that situation, but even at like track meets, like one of my teammates, she has a twin sister and I have a younger brother. Someone saw my younger brother and was asking her, "Oh, I met your brother." She's all, "I don't have a brother." Someone came up to me and was like, "I met your sister." I'm like, "I do not have a sister." So it's just a very awkward situation sometimes with that.
Janice concluded our discussion with an impactful message about representation and how essential it is to increase Black representation at Stevenson.
There's little representation in the staff, so we don't have many role models, at least at school, who we can, as Black students, look up to and ask questions about how to navigate this life and figure out who we are as people. Um, and without that role model, it's very difficult because we kind of are like, we can ask other people, but they don't exactly understand the situation on a personal level, which makes it difficult because they empathize with us as much as they can, but or sympathize as much as they can, but they can't truly get what we're truly going through. So I think more representation in Black staff members, especially like the core teachers. And I know like this will take a lot of time to like get it to where it needs to be, but I think at least getting the process started will help students in the future being able to walk into like their math or their English class or something and seeing another Black teacher, because seeing Black people in positions of success is very helpful because it makes the students feel like, oh, I have the potential to be successful. I have the potential to do something and be something great, rather than just being subjected to some lower position and thinking that they can't go any further, when in reality, they do have the potential to go far.
Continuing on, let's hear from Chloe, the co-president of the Filipino Student Association. To begin our discussion, Chloe reiterated the importance of representation that Janice spoke upon.
I feel like representation is really important because there's times where you feel like you don't have enough representation in terms of just you don't see things that can relate to you. So feeling things and having people who you can relate to and just having the comfort of people who understand the struggles you go through would make it a lot easier for people to come to Stevenson and sort of feel like they fit in, and just having people that can understand you in a different way, not necessarily just being a minority, but being within the same cultural group. I feel like having that aspect of representation is really helpful.
Chloe then touched on the potential struggles that a minority student may face at Stevenson, specifically struggles that students of the dominant culture may never experience in their time at Stevenson.
I feel like for some minority students, I think language can be a struggle. There's like people who are hesitant with speaking their own language. And even sometimes I've heard things at Stevenson that I didn't personally like agree with, or that were just sort of insensitive in a way, or it was just sort of naive comment at the moment under that term. So hearing things and sort of feeling scared to sort of stand up about that idea because you don't want to be judged or you won't be like ridiculed or prejudiced is sort of like that idea where like, you're kind of scared to stand up and under that terms.
Chloe, being the co-president of FASA, spoke about its importance as a club for students of Filipino descent. She then continued on to speak about the work they are doing to spread Filipino culture at Stevenson.
Since my club was made last year during COVID, it was very hard to create a club under those aspects. But since this year we can actually see each other, I feel like it's a lot easier for us to make connections, and it's a lot easier for us to spread more about our culture to the people who may not know as much. Like we have people who are half Filipino who maybe have not been able to hone in on that side of their culture. So it's been able to sort of spread that idea. And I feel like within our club, we have a lot of jokes that we can make and a lot of connections with families because most of us know each other by now. Due to World's Fair and stuff like that. So just having this club and being able to sort of just talk to these people that I never really see almost ever has given us sort of this family aspect, this idea. And like today, I was filming an SNN video with my foster group, and we ended like an hour ago, and they've just been at my house for like ever. So for us, we focus more on night market and World's Fair, but this year we kind of want to make it so we have more charity funds, and we can even work with other schools like we did last year. We worked with Lakes in order to create a bigger Filipino club. So specifically, we just want to be able to spread our culture with people who haven't really been able to experience it here, because for some reason a lot of minorities sort of guide away from their own cultures because they sort of want to fit into the American ideal. So trying to get people back into that Filipino culture is really our goal with this club.
Chloe concluded our discussion with a heartwarming story about the work her club does, which emphasizes the importance of cultural clubs in increasing inclusivity at Stevenson.
A good story was the sophomore year during World's Fair because we actually had performances and stuff. And not to brag, but we did win that year. So I felt like that just in general, that made the community of Filipinos at Stevenson feel more excited to get together and do better for like night market. And I feel like just being able to do practices with each other and having laughs, because outside of World's Fair, we had this one tinikling practice for someone's birthday party that we had, and going to that was just a different experience because you experience people outside of school, and it was like some child's actual birthday party that we had to go to. So I feel like having that is really the aspect that we learned to have more of that family, because it wasn't just school anymore. It was just having people that you understood and you could perform with them and you could talk with them and you could just connect. It was so easy to talk to these people whenever you needed something.
Finally, let's hear what Andrew Wang, the president of Chinese Club, has to say about his experience at Stevenson. Andrew began by adding on to the conversation about inclusivity by suggesting ways that Stevenson could increase representation of minority groups.
If she's talking about in like the district leadership, in the board, I think the community can help with that, because you need to get voted in to become, I think, this in like the district 125 board. So if you want more representation, it's completely possible if the community decides to vote them in.
Then, Andrew spoke about the work him and his team do to spread Chinese culture at Stevenson as part of Chinese Club.
I think it's fun. It's I think because there's a lot of people who understand my culture. We're on the same page in terms of spreading that culture. We're quite efficient. I would say I know my culture pretty well, and I would say a lot of the members understand Chinese culture pretty well too, either because it's their heritage or they're learning it. And because everyone understands the Chinese culture pretty well, I think we have a clear idea of what we want to do, whether that's service events or maybe events just to build interest. Chinese culture has just a clear direction, and I think it makes the club better because, yeah, I'm not saying Chinese club is the most diverse club at Stevenson, but we all have a very what we want to do, how we want to help the community, and how we can spread awareness for Chinese culture. In terms of spreading culture, every year there are things that Chinese Club does annually. So World's Fair, Chinese Club holds the booth. East Asian Festival or Street Fest, Chinese Club holds the booth, and we represent China. We have Chinese food, we have Chinese performers, and we spread the culture because a lot of people that come to World's Fair and East Asian Festival, they aren't Chinese, right? They get to try our food, they get to see Chinese dances, and they're more exposed to Chinese culture, authentic Chinese culture that they might not see otherwise, right? So I think we spread the culture by just exposing more people to real Chinese culture. We've also held many other kinds of service events. We've held dumpling wrapping for the homeless. So that's more service based, and we're helping the community. We've also done Project Reach, and events where I think we had around 200 plus students from China and about 70 plus Stevenson volunteers. And we essentially paired those Stevenson volunteers to teach Chinese students English through Zoom. So I think that was great because we expose Chinese students to more American culture and vice versa. So we're connecting people, and I think it was a very empowering experience for the Stevenson volunteers and the students in China. So we're just connecting people. We're connecting non-Chinese people in America to Chinese culture, and we're even connecting people in China to American culture, and just spreading cultural awareness, connecting people through understanding each other. I think that allows us to raise empathy, and it just naturally increases inclusion when everyone understands each other better.
Andrew wrapped up our conversation with a powerful statement about increasing understanding of cultural differences, which would thus decrease ignorance in our community.
Yeah, so like I said before, the more we understand about each other, the more that we can decrease ignorance. Because the truth is that most hate, it stems from ignorance, right? If we can learn more about other people, if we learn more about groups that we aren't familiar with, we'll decrease ignorance, and it gives less reason for hate. And naturally, that also means a more inclusive, respectful environment. So I think it's pretty straightforward. The more we understand, the better, the more connected we are to each other. And I think that's very important right now in Stevenson in such crazy times. I think it's great for everyone to be more familiar with each other, and it's such a big school too, right? So yeah, so the more we know about each other, it's just better.
Overall, we believe our discussion was vital to the future of not only the Stevenson community, but the education system as a whole. As minority struggles continue to be emphasized and brought to light, it's important to consider all perspectives when conversing on such a sensitive yet impactful topic. Education is so influential on adolescent development that it is crucial for students to feel included and heard in their learning communities. As we've seen, cultural clubs have played a big role in that, and there will be many more steps taken in the future. With that being said, we would like to conclude this episode of Statesman Soundwave. We hope you were able to learn more about the minority perspective at Stevenson. Also, be sure to check out BASE, FASA, and the Chinese Club, and thanks to Janice, Chloe, Andrew, and Dr. Haney for all their support on this episode. See you guys on the next episode of Statesman Soundwave.